We reach an elevation of 0 to 5 feet. That's what the purple section stands for. Now what that means, from a layman standpoint, let me use the term sea level. So we're at elevation 5 is 5 feet above sea level. Some of our city is already above sea level. Some of our city is at sea level, at 0, and some of it is below 0. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit. What our concern is, and what our effort that we've undertaken, is to address the backwater areas. And by backwater, I'm talking about the levees that border Lake Pelor and keep the lake water from flowing into the city. Those levees are generally at about a 6-foot elevation. And the first numbers we got from the Corps about what we could expect for backwater flooding was to elevation 6. So we took all of those levees, and quite frankly, we added a little cushion to that and said anything at 7 or below, we're going to address. And we've done so with those HESCO baskets that you've seen, and we're continuing to do so with the sandbags that you will be seeing over the next few days as we continue to raise those levees. So our attempt, and the reason that we have addressed it with where we've had some requests for sandbags, and we said no, let us raise these levees. If we can raise the levees and keep the water out of the city, there won't be a need to protect each house on an individual basis. That's been our strategy. We'll go to the next one, and believe me, the Colonel will come back and answer more questions on that particular slide, and this particular slide also. This is a slide of the system itself, and as you can see, these flow rates in these little boxes here are indicative of the flows that we're seeing, and this slide came from yesterday, so these are yesterday's numbers. And I think one of the key numbers is up here. This would be the flow at the Red River Landing, and right here it says 1,000,003. Today's number is like 1,000,004, and the Colonel will explain why that's important. The Morganza floodway coming down the Atchafalaya River and what comes out of Old River. And one of the little points I want to make on this slide is that regardless if flow comes out of Morganza or comes out of Old River or any combination of the two, there's only one exit. And the exit's here at the Atchafalaya River through either between the bridges, between Morgan City and Berwick, or out of the Waxley County. Okay? Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, these are the battle lines as far as I'm concerned, and this is where we're doing our work. The current crest estimation by the National Weather Service and through the Corps of Engineers for the river, if Morganza is operated, is 12 to 13 feet. What that means is the flow coming out of this river right here, the Atchafalaya River and through its the main stem here, against the seawall, means that we should experience up to 6.5 feet of flooding or 6.5 feet of water against that wall. The reference point I would use in explaining that would be Ferret Street. So if you stand at the big gate at Ferret Street, which is approximately right here, you stand at that big gate that's now closed, reach your hand up and touch the 6.5 foot mark. That's about where the water will be. And of course that water will stretch from there all the way to the Berwick Vault. And there will be properties on the other side of the seawall that will be underwater or at least have water 6 feet up those properties. Okay? This is going to be a massive amount of water, and it's a massive amount of water that we have not experienced before. Those of you who are here in '73 will know that the river reached a level of 10.5 in 1973 and on the river, and what we're talking about here is 12.5, so up to 2 feet higher than that number. Now, at that particular point, and quite frankly, much earlier than that, as early as perhaps the 15th or 16th, we expect the river to reach a level of 9. At 9 foot, we have to close all of the floodgates along Front Street. And we've already started that process, and we close them as the water approaches the bottoms of those gates. We do that to give the people on the unprotected side, the handful of residents, we have about 4 residents back there, but we have a lot of businesses back there. We're giving them the maximum amount of time they need to get their house in order, take their property out, to levy around their facilities, to accomplish all the things they want to accomplish. But we're monitoring that every day, and we have closed some of the gates. I think we're up to 11 gates closed, I believe. 11 gates are closed. We have a total of 27. Now, some of those 27 won't need to be closed because they're at such a high elevation, pending no changes. But we will probably have all of the gates along the Front Street closed by the weekend, and then continue to close the rest of the gates as necessary. Some of these gates have also been closed along the south side of the city, along the intercoastal. But we'll continue to monitor that and do that. And that's important, of course. That keeps that river water out of the city. That's one challenge, of course, the water that passes between the bridges. The second challenge is that after this water leaves us, it then has a tendency to flow around and end up raising the level of Lake Pellurik. And that's what I was talking about earlier. That's where our battle lines have been. The first work we did, which many of you have seen the pictures of, we started putting HESCO baskets on Justice Street levee, and we've accomplished that task. We've also got HESCO baskets on the full length of the Auburn subdivision levee, and that task has completed all the way to the A&P Canal, or this canal right here, with those levees. That particular levee along the A&P Canal generally is at a high enough level where we are not concerned about it. But we do want to raise this Auburn subdivision levee so that we bring it up. With the HESCO basket sitting on top of that levee, we generally are protecting to a +9. Okay? The prediction I will remind you of for the lake was originally a +6, and even in the more later literature, they're talking about a +5. So we feel very good that we're about the level we're raising this to as providing adequate level of protection for us. We also will be raising along LA 70. The levee that exists along LA 70 Canal is high enough, but the highway itself has some spots that are somewhat low, and there again, we want to add some elevation to that and take care of that. And we have as recently as yesterday or day before yesterday, taken elevations along LA 70 for that purpose. That's to keep the water from that outfall canal from rolling over Highway 70 and then bothering us in these areas. And we'll continue that to whatever elevation we need to make sure that that's protected. The next area that we're working on, and that work started today, is on the Syracuse levee. And this levee protects not only Syracusaville, but it also protects the city from flooding that could come in from the lake, but come in this direction and get to us in these areas here. So those are our battle lines as we encircle the city around the lake to keep the lake waters from coming out. I've been asked on a number of occasions, well, let's go to the next slide first, and I'll have one more, I'll come back to it. One other area that we do need to raise is along Lake Pellurik Drive, and this little track here, these are the houses on Lake Pellurik Drive, and this line here will be the line of protection that we'll add there. Now, they may be baskets or they may be sandbags, and it depends on the specific elevations here. But that will also bring that level of protection up to a high level to keep the lake from coming into Lakeside and continue to protect the city there. Okay, next slide, Gene. The other item of protection, in addition to raising the levees, the next battle line, if you will, is Bayou Chene. Now, those of you who were here in '73 do remember that a barge was sunk across Bayou Chene to keep that river water from flowing back north and coming into Lake Pellurik. Well, St. Mary Parish Levee District is undertaking the exact same strategy by locating a barge generally in this vicinity. And in a minute, I'm going to also ask Bill Hidalgo, who is our St. Mary Parish Levee Board President. He will come up and give you a status report on that project specifically, and he'll talk about it specifically. But the idea there is to protect the city by putting a structure across Bayou Chene to keep that flow from coming in. If we can, through that process, reduce the flow going into the lake, that means the lake doesn't get to as high of a level, and our levees are more than adequate to keep the flow out of the city. Next one. With that strategy, that's the strategy we're following. From the time we get that level of protection up, our next chore as the water comes up will be to continue to monitor that to make sure that there's no deficiencies, no issues that come up with those levees that would cause us to have concern for any of those levees to be overtopped or have any seepage. Now, based on the numbers we've received, we do not anticipate the overtopping, but you do have to be diligent because the river's going to come up and it's going to stay up for a good while before it gets back down to where it is today. You know, at 6 foot, we're in good shape. Got a couple of gates closed, everything's fine. At the levels that we will see, this water will stay up against these levees for a long time period, and we're going to have to be diligent at watching these. When I say diligent, I'm talking about 24-hour surveillance, and we are planning for that. We will have that, and we've got a commitment that the National Guard will stay with us through this entire event so that we can make sure we monitor those levees and make sure that there are no breaches. Our strategy is basically that. If we can continue to have good levee protection, we believe we're in good shape. And that's the course of action that we're taking.